I always say that I use a three-step system to bring people into my organization. But number one, I have to know what they're driven towards. And so I use a
Mhm.
tool called predictive index to understand what they're driven towards. Next, I have to know that they're a culturally relevant fit. Do they fit my ethos, my desires, my outcomes? If they don't have a passion for people and making impact, they're just not going to jive well with me culturally. The piece of advice I would leave them with is that you said you're a mindset person, and I am as well. Mindset is everything. And for me, you have to give yourself to the process. If you're constantly trying to avoid the problems, avoid the issues versus charging into them, you never learn the lesson that you need tomorrow.
Welcome back to another episode of Simple Chat. I'm your host, Janine Cassio, and today we have a very exciting guest with us, the king of exits, Eddie Wilson. Eddie, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Yeah, Janine, thanks for having me on the show today. I'm Eddie Wilson, serial entrepreneur, someone who is very passionate about business, startups, acquisitions, but I play in a lot of spaces. I play in the real estate space, I play in the lending space, I kind of play in a lot of different places. But I would say I exist in three areas. I exist in the financial kind of corporate space, buying and selling companies. I exist in the investor space. I have a lot of real estate assets and investments in private equity. And then lastly, altruist. I love to do all of that to create impact and give it all away.
That's so awesome. And I follow you through social media, and everything you're doing, by the way, is amazing. The reason why I know who you are is through my mentor, Mike Tedesco, and he's mentioned you being his mentor. So it's very exciting to meet my mentor's mentor and have you on my podcast. So thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely. And Mike's a great guy, by the way. I've known Mike for years. His kind of like growth in the appraisal world has been legendary.
Yeah, and like for me, like seeing him scale that company, but now diving into other companies, kind of like someone might look at you and be like, "How do you do all of that?" Like
Mhm.
it's kind of mind blowing, but it really is like, you know, a mindset, being able to, buy these companies. And let me ask you, when you buy the company, are you in any sort of like are you giving yourself like CEO title? Are you in any of the ops, or like what, like tell me more about that.
Sure. Yeah, so I buy and sell a lot of companies. I've bought and sold over 100 and 125 companies now. I've had a lot of exits, but typically I'm buying and I'm not usually stepping into an operational role personally, but I have an entire operational team and I have an operational system called
Wow.
Empire. So every business I buy goes into the Empire operating system, and then I have a team and I fractionalize that team. So I have CEOs, CROs, chief revenue officers, CFOs, COOs, right? And so I'm typically just filling in the gaps on the companies that I buy. And I love to buy companies versus start companies because they already typically have a framework. I can see where the issues are. It's easier to plug in and get them to the next level. And so that's why I've done it, quite a few times.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm sure like just being an entrepreneur, buying and selling companies, you've probably hit so many obstacles or challenges. Like what keeps you going? Like what keeps you going and buying another and another?
Yeah. I mean, I think most guys like me are deal junkies, and you can't help but chase the next big thing, and that's a lot of fun. I love the thrill of the hunt and the kill, but for me, it's bigger than that today. I had my big exit. I sold 76 companies in 1 year for a little over a
Wow.
billion, and for me, I really was struggling with fulfillment, like actually feeling like my life was worth something. It's like you can hit a pinnacle and a mountaintop, and then there's really not a bigger one to go after. And then you're like,
Mhm.
well, what is all this worth? And so I
Yeah.
got to I got to that place in my life and really started exploring purpose and really found kind of like philanthropic things to be my purpose. And so now my purpose is so great. We feed and educate about 4,800 children a day with orphanages and feeding centers and all this
Amazing.
stuff. But to me, it's like it's endless. I was just in Colombia last week. We opened a new feeding center and education center in Colombia. At the same time, I was opening one in Malawi, Africa, and it's like it's never ending. It's like I could go build 100 more, and so
Mhm.
business is really just a vehicle. It's a conduit to actually serve what really fulfills me. I'm good at the systems and processes and buying and selling companies, But I do it today not because I'm trying to create wealth or legacy. I'm doing it because it serves this greater need inside, which
Yeah.
is to give back and make impact on people's lives.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. Um, to have these like processes in place, because obviously you're doing now openings, like you said, multiple at one time. Like, what would you say is like the key to building those operations and those systems? Like, is it finding, the right people? Is it just making sure the process is in place? Like, how do you like even oversee that much?
For me, it's number one, building the system, and then it's hiring the people to run the system. Like I always say that I use a three-step system to bring people into my organization. But number one, I have to know what they're driven towards. And so I use a
Mhm.
tool called predictive index to understand what they're driven towards. Next, I have to know that they're a culturally relevant fit. Do they fit my ethos, my desires, my outcomes? If they don't have a passion for people and making impact, they're just not going to jive well with me culturally. And then lastly, it's their experience. And so all experiences, so all the three of those kind of have to coincide with the big vision. Now, the benefit of doing what I do at scale is that I have the systems already built. So for instance,
Mhm.
if I was going to go from one business to two businesses or three businesses, I wouldn't go from one business to two until I had a system of how I measured
Got it.
and understood the success of that business. Then I would hire somebody to essentially run that system. So that's how I did it. That's how I found success. And that's really how I have hundreds of companies. Now
Yeah.
we're back after I sold a ton. I think I'm back down to 23 true operational companies, a couple hundred employees. And I do that because I have a system. So I can pull in any business I want and just add the people to run my system.
Wow. Hey, if you ever want to tap into Simple Lending Financial, you could come help me for sure.
Happy to. Happy
That's
to.
amazing. Do you offer like any business coaching? Is that what Empire is a
We,
coaching?
so, yeah, I don't actually offer coaching personally, but what I do is
Okay.
I sow into a community. So I have a system called Empire. There's 3,800 businesses that run on the system globally now. I never really built it
Nice.
as a product. I just used it. And then I
Got
started
it.
then what happened is I would sell those businesses and the private equity firms would buy those businesses and go, "Wow, we like how this operates. Can we have it for all of our businesses?" And so it
Wow.
just kind of expanded. So now, a lot of what I teach and help people with is the Empire operating system that helps their business.
Mhm.
And I don't have the time necessarily because I love to operate the businesses. I like to be in the
Yeah.
deals. And so I don't do the coaching, but what I do is I get onto our community calls and I sew into people that way.
Cool.
So we've got a very, very strong community that all operate on Empire. They kind of come into that community for support. And then we do different networking things and spend time together.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely check that out.
Sure.
Um, if you were to talk to Eddie from, 10 years ago, what would be like that one piece of advice you would really leave them with?
Yeah. The piece of advice I would leave them with is that you said you're a mindset person, and I am as well. Mindset is everything. And for me, you have to give yourself to the process. If you're constantly trying to avoid the problems, avoid the issues versus charging into them, you never learn the lesson that you need tomorrow. And so I would go back to myself 10 years ago and say, hey, you're gonna have a couple of stumbles, you're gonna have a couple of problems. Just learn through it. Just embrace it. It's okay. Like it's okay to fail. It's okay to have problems.
Hmm.
Embrace it. Be grateful for the lessons you learn
Yeah.
and move on. Business is really about resilience. It's about not getting, it's the guy who's sitting there shooting a three-pointer and he misses the shot. The great shooters miss shots. They just come back with the right mindset on their next shot. And that really is what business is. It's about resilience. It's about like, yes, I failed yesterday. Yes, I failed in that last sales call I had. Yes, I failed at whatever it is. But tomorrow it can be different as long as I learn from what happened.
Wow. I love that. All about perspective.
Mhm.
It's just hard sometimes, but
It is.
yes.
Very
So, did you have any mentors to help you get to where you are? Like any books that you maybe want to share that really like helped
Sure.
shift your mindset?
Sure. I'll say I want to give one book and then I'll talk about a mentor real quick. First book I always push is, and I've got a bunch of books that I love, but I love the book by Ryan Holiday called Ego is the Enemy. I think oftentimes everything you want as an entrepreneur is on the other side of your ego. It's important to build a brand, but not build a brand where it's so ego driven that you can't learn, right? Like ego becomes a
Hmm.
wall that doesn't allow information and knowledge to permeate. So Ego is the Enemy is always a book I push. I love a lot of other books. Why Hard Things Are Hard by Horowitz. There's so many amazing books out there. The second thing that I want to say though is I have had a series of mentors along the way. I think mentors are vital. And every
Hmm.
step that I've taken, I've had to almost find the next mentor. For instance,
Yeah.
like I sold the companies for $1 billion. Well, it's like I really wanted somebody who was unbiased to my decision making, who was a step ahead of me. Well, when you sell a company for $1 billion, it's really hard to then find somebody that's like already done that, you know? So I really found that there was gaps in my relationships, you know, like I struggle with relationships sometimes. And so, because I'm so driven. And so the coach I have right now is talking to me a lot more about relationships and building lasting, meaningful relationships because, you know, my relationships have always suffered because I'm so driven towards the business side. So
Hmm.
I was successful
Yeah.
there, but yet unsuccessful in so many other places. And so I think it's about understanding where your gaps are, getting somebody that's a step ahead of you, and then giving yourself to their advice. And I've had a lot. I mean, everything from my father was a great first mentor in my first business, to a guy by the name of Sam Freshman out of LA that was the godfather of syndication. He taught me so much about real
Cool.
estate. To Don Pierce, who is the former CEO of Arby's, taught me so much about business and process. And you know,
Wow.
it's just on and
Yeah,
on
I'm
and
sure
on.
franchise
Yeah,
people really know processes.
sure. You got it.
Very cool. Love that. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Like, where can people, find you and connect with you if they want to learn more?
Sure. I have been dedicated to answering all my DMs. So I don't
Yeah,
manage
that's how I got you. That
I
I
don't man-
stand truth to that.
I don't manage my social. I've got a team that does that, but I do answer legitimate questions through DMs. And so whether it's Instagram, Eddie Wilson Official, LinkedIn, all the things, I stay pretty active there and really just try to sow back into the entrepreneurial community by
Hmm.
answering questions that people have.
Very cool. And you go on tour, right? You hop around the country, if not the world.
Yeah.
So where can people find those like tour dates and to see if you're in the city? And do
Sure.
you do like meetups?
I do. I do
Cool.
oftentimes meet up with people. But yeah, so I have what's called the Aspire Tour. The Aspire Tour is a nationwide and soon to be global tour, and we're the largest. They call us the largest business tour in America right now. We average 3 to 5 thousand
Nice.
people in a stadium every single month, and so I'll be in Fort Lauderdale next week. Then it goes to Denver, Phoenix, Orlando, San Antonio, and it's throughout, it's every single month somewhere. So they can go to aspiretour.com if they want to see one of the tour stops. And then I bring all my friends with me. So we've got all the celebrities that come with me. So it's David Goggins and Kevin Hart and Kevin O'Leary and, Barbara Corcoran and all the Shark Tank people. And so I bring them all with me. They all speak, and it's a lot of fun.
That is awesome. Very cool. Thank you so much for joining again, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.